Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast number 28. Today we have the first guest from Bulgaria, which I'm very proud of and happy. Finally, I've managed to find someone from Bulgaria that's very interesting, that's from my home country. And the podcast is called Unconsciously from Bulgaria because the guest of today's podcast is Verginia Yancheva. And she works a lot on the international scene, so she never thought about she was from Bulgaria, or she didn't even consider the fact that she's from Bulgaria. So this is why the title of the podcast. And she has a podcast herself. It's the Fashion Photography Podcast. So check the links in the description of the podcast if you want to check her podcast, because I think she's doing this from now since 5 years. So must be pretty dope. I've heard a couple of episodes, and yeah, I like them a lot. So if you're into creativity, into fashion photography, just go check her podcast. Yeah, and enjoy our conversation here. And if you like the channel, if you like the platform of the Creative Insider, you can support just by simply going on Instagram, typing at TCI Podcast, follow, or on Facebook and LinkedIn, the Creative Insider. Although Facebook is pretty dead, so I would suggest LinkedIn if you're on there. And if you're listening on any platform where you can subscribe or rate, just subscribe and give a good rate to the podcast so that it can help a little bit the algorithm. So thank you and enjoy this podcast number 28.
The whole world stops just like that.
Hello, Verginia. How are you?
Great, George. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing also good. In our little chit chat before the recording, I was telling you you're a very important guest to this podcast because you're the first guest from Bulgaria.
Oh, so nice, right?
Yeah, it's cool because I'm Bulgarian. I started the podcast now 5 months ago or 6 months ago, and haven't had the chance so far to talk to somebody from Bulgaria. And of course, the first guest is you, and it happened kind of by accident, just because I found you through Instagram, as a lot of my guests. So thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a real pleasure.
Very cool. You can introduce a little bit yourself to the audience, what you do, who you are.
So my name is, you guys probably already know, is Verginia. George, this is such an odd question because of the pandemic, probably. Because if you asked me a year ago, I would simply say I am a commercial photographer. But now things are changing, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately. And I would say that I consider myself more of just a creator, because photography can be an endeavor. This can be the thing that you use in order to express yourself. But yeah, I'm just a creative person.
And what kind of, because I found you through your Instagram, you have amazing pictures of commercials, and it's more like fashion style. And you define yourself as a creator and as a creative person. So I like to start all these conversations from the beginning of the story of the guest. So was there a moment in your life where you remember that you thought, okay, in my life, I want to do something creative?
Okay, so this is going to be a very long beginning. So
It's fine. We have all the time of the world.
good. Hopefully, the listeners also have the whole time of the world, because I've been doing this for, I think, already 13 years professionally. And the story is even longer than that, because I am actually a kid in a big family. I have an older sister and younger brother. And as a middle child, I never wanted to take away the things that my brother and sister love. So my brother was into computers and my sister was into photography and biology. And since I knew that this is her thing, I was like, well, I'm not touching photography. But one day I was in the hallway of my parents' house, and my mother and her brother-in-law wanted me to take a picture of them because I simply was the only person there. So they were like, hey, just press this button and take a picture. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And I pressed the button, and I remember how amazing was that. It was like a moment of magic because when you press this button, there is a super tiny moment when everything is black. But in this moment, I realized what is actually happening in a camera. And the thing that is actually happening is that this moment is never going to repeat itself. They are never going to be this age. They're never going to have this emotions. I will never be there because, I can frame it in a different way than everybody else. And you can also do the same. Like, this is your view. So I realize how amazing this is. But I kept it a secret. I fell in love instantly and I was just so silent about it because this was my sister thing. So I don't know how old was then, but I remember that when I had to go to high school, I said to my parents, and by the way, I was a good student. I was kind of understanding literature and kind of understanding mathematics. So in Bulgaria, when you have to apply for high school, you have to take two tests in literature and in math. And this is like the thing that everybody does. And when you do it, you can go in all types of school, and it depends on your choice. So I went to my parents and I was like, you know what, guys? I just wanted to tell you that I'm not taking these tests. And I remember my mother's face because she was like, what? If I don't take the test, I cannot go to a specific, to specialized high school, which was a big disaster. But they took it, like parents of three kids, and they were like, okay, we're gonna figure it out. And I was like, sure, okay, figure it out. I don't care what's gonna happen. Because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I was really silent about my photography love. So my parents did everything they could, and they found a very specific high school that was like the only high school in the whole country that was not accepting kids through these generic tests, but they had a different test for each and every specialty in their school. And they signed me up for their tests. And I went there. It turned out that I will be applying. I didn't even know what was that, but it turned out I was applying for a specialty called Audi Vision. And trust me, when you're that when you're that young, you've got no idea what this means. But I went to the test, I took it, and then they decided to accept me first of the girls, second overall. And it turned out that this is actually a specialty where I'm going to study television, directing, photography, and audio. And I was just so, so happy. Yeah.
Where was this school?
It's a school, like, you're probably gonna understand it since you are from Bulgaria and you have roots here, but for everybody else, this is gonna be absolutely unknown location. This is right next in Sofia, in the capital, and it's located right next to New Bulgarian University.
I understand, and I'm very excited to have you on the podcast as a guest from Bulgaria because you know um, I have grown up abroad, but my family is Bulgarian, so I had this clash of cultures. On one side, all my friends were Italian, and my family is Bulgarian. So the way my parents think, it's very different from the way that my friends were thinking. And people in like Bulgaria is this. It's a little bit. It's not confusing, but it's amazing because it's, to me, it's the land which is the land of the where cultures are mixing, the West and the East. And here people have been living, for example, in democracy and in free economy for a longer time, so they have a little bit more this spirit of exploring. And I can imagine your parents when you said that you're not gonna go the traditional path, which in Bulgaria would mean like get good grades, take the test, get in a very good I don't know, English or German academy, high school, and then further on complete your studies, maybe even abroad. And this was for me when I thought I'm gonna have you on a podcast. Very interesting to see how a path of a Bulgarian creatives goes, like how develops, because yeah, we have this practical side also. My parents were like, you need to pick a profession that you can practice
Yeah.
in a everywhere, no like bullshit creative shit. Or and it's interesting because I was a good student myself, and but I had the fortune that in Italy there is no like in Bulgaria, there is not like a school that you need to get into to be successful because the country is so big. So I went just to a school of arts that was suggested because I'm an architect. So this was suggested for somebody who wanted to study architecture. And it's interesting to me how you have gotten into this school. So you were around 16, 17. How old were you when you
Oh,
started?
I don't know. I was 7 to the 8th grade. I don't know how old was I back then, to be honest. And I also want to mention something that I believe is very important because I know you have this nostalgic to Bulgaria, and I think this is so, so sweet. But I'm also not, I think it's important to say it, but I'm also not the traditional Bulgarian. I've, as I told you already, I am part of a very big family, and fortunately, my parents are not the traditional Bulgarians. There are people, I mean, they are Bulgarians, but there are people that are really ready to experiment and try new things and just do whatever they have to do to, uh, you know, take care of the family. But they're very, very open. Like in my family, my parents are dealing with transportation, for example. My sister turned out a biologist, a very good one. My brother is still dealing with computers, but in another way. Right now, he's working with smart homes and creating things like this. And I am in this creative route. So they've never stopped us to do whatever we want to do, and just because we have to have a traditional profession or something like this. Plus, I've been traveling a lot thanks to my profession. So unfortunately, I don't think that I'm the traditional Bulgarian person.
But I think that no creative person can tell for themselves I'm traditional,
Yeah.
because being creative involves being untraditional, being different,
Being
chasing.
you instead of trying to be someone else, I would say, because many people probably think that they need to have something super different, and they just have to be out of the box to be good creators. But I don't believe that that's the truth. Like, for example, I do shoot very commercial images, and as you can tell from my portfolio, from my Instagram, I'm a commercial photographer. And I've always thought, for example, that I've got no place, let's say, in England, because, England is most famous with their odd and, how to call it? They even call it ugly beauty, kind of editorials. So I'm more of a classic photographer. And when I went there, I remember that I was just like convincing myself. I was like, oh, these guys are never going to like my portfolio. But then I met with some high profile people and they were like, well, your portfolio looks great. And I was like, whoa, I did not expect you to say that. So I shared my concerns and they were like, oh, wait a minute, your portfolio is commercial. It can fit everywhere. And then I realized it's the absolute truth. But being more commercial means that the people that are looking at your photography, in my case, they're going to associate themselves with what they see. They're going to digest it more easily. So if you guys, for example, want to be commercial photographers, you don't have to be out of the box like 100%. Of course, you need to have some sort of spark. You need to have great ideas, but you don't necessarily need to be this super odd creative person.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not, doesn't mean to be odd, but to go a different direction at some point in your life,
Yeah.
as you did, because you did something that's not very common, and then you went your way,
True.
and you walk your path. So, but to go back to your school, so you started this school, and how was your experience in this school? How
Oh,
did it look like studying?
it was amazing. So half of the day we were taking photographs or being in the dark room, and the other half we were just studying English, for example. So every day was different, but every day was practice. And if we weren't shooting, we were talking about directing or doing video and things like this. So it was definitely not the traditional way of going into high school, and definitely not what most of my acquaintances and friends have seen during their high school years. So it was great, and it was amazing. But also, it's very important to make sure that the people that you're surrounded with are also interested in this. And it wasn't like this exactly in my case. So a big part of my co-students weren't really interested in this. So I really wanted to shoot more. I knew that this is what I want to do. So I started sending emails here and there asking different magazines whether they need photographers. And of course, no one answered the first like 3 months. But then I got a call, and there was a lovely girl on the other side of the phone, and she was like, "Hey, our main photographer is going to maternity, so would you like to come for a meeting and show me your portfolio?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, let's do it. When?" And she said, "Tomorrow. How about tomorrow?" I was like, "Okay, we're doing it tomorrow, no problem at all." Hung up the phone and I was like, oh my God, I need to go and print my portfolio. And I also need to figure out what I'm gonna put in my portfolio. And I had to do this for like less than a day. So I printed some images, went to the meeting, and she saw my portfolio and she started asking questions. And she was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm studying." And she said, "Oh, great! For how long you've been studying photography?" And I was like, "Oh, that's the key." So she's not asking me what grade I am. She's asking me for how long I've been studying photography. And back then I was in 10th grade. So I was like, "Oh, 2 years." And she really thought that I'm in university. And she was like, "Oh, okay, that's gorgeous. Okay, I really love your portfolio. Let's give it a try." And how about you starting to shoot for our two magazines? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay, let's do it. I went crazy afterwards, I remember, because I did not expect it. And for 2 years after this moment, everybody in the magazine, those two magazines, they were thinking that I'm actually over 18. But when I went there to just bring something sweet for my 18th birthday, they all went crazy. They were like, "Oh my god, you're not even." Yeah, sorry, but that was the situation. It was funny because I was shooting for them in my spare time after lectures, after school. But I was signing my contract on the first floor, and the actual magazine was on the second floor. So they never knew how old was I.
That sounds a very cool fairy tale story as a beginner. And so for how long have you been studying in this school?
Oh, 5 years.
And 5 years.
Yeah, just
And
like
do you
regular school.
like a regular school? And then how was the school organized when you started like following the different classes? Did you also need to buy your own photography gear,
Yeah.
or was the school providing for that? And how was that? Because I mean, mm, I'm a passionate about photography. I take some pictures myself. I have a very basic um, mirror reflex camera, just to
Mhm.
I bought one very basic one just to try out if I actually like taking pictures with a camera. And I mean, if you go deep into the craft, it can get expensive.
Yeah.
So how did you start to approach this part of the work?
So at the very beginning, you have to, like, when I went to the school, I had to buy a camera, which was a classic camera. However, in the school, you have some sort of supplies. Like, for example, you've got all the chemicals, you've got some photo paper, and things like that. When we talk about lighting, for example, they still had some that you can use in the classroom. And same goes for the actual, like, video cameras and the equipment for editing and those things. I think this was a long time ago, but I really think that we used these cameras for 2 years nonstop, and then we switched to we didn't really switch. We started to use also digital cameras. So at the end of the school, you know how to use both of them. You know how to use darkroom, you know how to edit video, you know how to retouch images, you know how to deal with sound, you do study also some directing. So there is a mix of those things, and at the end you actually have to graduate with a movie, a short movie, like not the shortest movie, but a fairly short movie, like 10 to 15 minutes.
Sounds interesting. And so you went to the school. I imagine, I think you built your portfolio by taking pictures like for your school projects or of your friends. Or how did it work building your first portfolio of pictures for that first gig you got?
I think when you're actually doing something that you like doing so much, no one can stop you to do it constantly. So I'm not a photographer. I'm still not. I've never been, and until this day, I'm not the photographer that you'll see constantly with a camera, especially like the last 5 to maybe even 7 years. I'm not that person. I'm usually taking my camera when I have a gig, because my camera and my photography gear is super heavy. So I don't really want to carry it around. But back then, when I was starting, like, my friends were from school. So whenever we go somewhere, I'm usually with my camera because I needed it for school. And yeah, you're completely right. That's how I build my portfolio. Plus, we've got some specific classes like still life photography and things like that. When we shoot, for example, portraits, it was a very big school, by the way. So there were very different specialties. It was a very specific school. So, for example, there was this audio-vision specialty that I told you about, and there was textile specialty. There was a fashion designer specialty. There was what else? It was just a very big variety. Like, for example, there were people studying for attorneys and lawyers, people studying for actors. So the best thing about it was that we were all connecting. And for example, when we needed to shoot portraits, we can easily go to the actors and be like, hey guys, do you need some headshots? When we wanted to, or we had a class when we need to shoot, for example, fashion, we just had to go to the fashion designers. So there was this constant conversation within our different specialties, which I find very exciting and fascinating. And I still do believe that this is the key to having a very strong education, because I know in myself, I know that it's working. So this is how I built my portfolio back then. And afterwards, for the uni, I actually I used a lot of my work from magazines. And I also took some very specific photographs just for my test for the uni.
But you were saying there were I don't know if you said that already. If the school you were going to, it's a private school,
No,
and I'm curious.
It wasn't. It was a public school, but unfortunately, ever since I finished, I was actually the last year of the last course of students in this specific specialty, and I don't know what happened to the school ever since.
And how did fit to have people starting studying something connected with law in a school where, because you said there were people studying to become lawyers,
Yeah.
attorneys.
Well,
Is it something with copyright maybe, or I
oh,
don't know?
they were studying like you're in university. It was the same in my specialty. Even when I was actually graduating, I wanted to apply in 3 different schools. One of them was in England. The other 2 were in Sofia. So my head teacher, he said, you know what, just apply to 2 of those universities. Don't apply to the third one. And the reason for that was because he was coming from this university. He was previously a university lecturer and educator, and what he did was to actually take this university program and apply it to high school. It was the same thing, but instead of, because in Bulgarian the university is actually 4 years, not like in most European countries. The university years are just 3, and in Bulgaria there are 4. So he took these 4 years and put into 5 and just applied it into a high school, but it was the same structure. So that's the reason why he told me not to go to this university, because I was going to study the same thing. And that's exactly what's happening with the other specialties. So they're taking teachers from universities and they're applying this same structure just for 1 more year. So for the people that are studying, for example, law, they're studying like in a university. And that is very exciting, actually, because when you finish school, you can simply apply to the uni and get into the second year straight away, simply because you have this type of education.
And which was the university you didn't apply to, if you can reveal the name?
Oh, I don't want to put them in a bad light or something like this, because like this is the the this is the program that I had in my high school. This is the only reason that I did not apply there.
Yeah, but that's what you said. It's not a bad lie. You just personally didn't apply to that university.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I don't want to push you to say a name.
Well, it's super big. Like there are two. One of them is public school. I'm sorry, public university, and the other one is private university. So I didn't want it to go to the public university because of the program and because they were more turned to the classical process. And you know, I love being in the dark room. I love doing that, but I also love technology. So I really love what I can do with today's cameras. I really love to go back to the classical, but I have a very specific opinion on what the client wants. So I knew that I want to work with clients, and I knew that the classical approach will just not work well for me. So that's the reason why I applied to a university in England, and this private university that I actually finished.
So in the end, you ended in studied in Bulgaria in a private university with specific faculty photography, or something mixed.
Visual arts. So actually, I did apply to both of the schools. I was accepted in both of them, but I decided to stay in Bulgaria because that's how I felt, to be honest with you. I did not regret my choice, not even a bit. Because if I had to go to England, I'm sorry to say that, but I really like to rely on myself. And if I had to go to England, this means that my parents had to take care of my education. And this was not making me feel comfortable at all. So I also knew the photographers, because they're photographers above all, that are going to teach me in the private university in Bulgaria. So they were really big professionals. They were amazing photographers. And I really wanted to study under their advisement, because I also knew the photographers in England, and they were good, but they weren't that good, sorry to say that. They were more of a theory guys instead of the people that are turned more into practice. So the practical side. So I really wanted to study under these amazing photographers' guidance, and that's why I decided to stay in Bulgaria. And fortunately, I was also accepted here. So,
well, you ended up, making the right choice. It's interesting to hear that from you because, for me, living abroad, as I told you, it was a little different and was a little also interesting to observe Bulgaria like from a distance and from like very detached. And so I have a lot of people that I know in Bulgaria. I have other my cousins, like basically all of my family. So I'm like the old. So my mom has a twin, and her twin has two kids. So we feel all like siblings. So I'm the oldest one. I'm the first of four like kids, so to say. Like my brother, it's 10 years younger, together with one of my cousin, and the other cousin is 7 years younger. So I could observe their path through these points as you did. And sometimes I think that people underestimate what kind of quality of education and services there in Bulgaria, and they just follow the concept that if you go somewhere abroad, the education will be better, or the quality of what you get will be better. And in some cases, I don't think even it's a very good choice for a person to go abroad, because that has other consequences on your life. Because, for example, for me, as someone that grew abroad, I'm Bulgarian, but I'm also not Bulgarian, and this creates this sort of feeling that you don't have really a home. I mean, it's, and now I'm in third country because I grew up in Italy and now I'm in Germany.
Yeah.
So it feels very weird, and I don't have this sense of home beside of your professional development or whatever. So I don't think it's always. Yeah, I think that you did a good a good choice from as someone that observes you from the external point of view. And when you started this university, I noticed since we started the podcast that you have a very good English. And you mentioned you've been to England. Did you go for this university application, or
No.
after the university you went also to try maybe out to work there?
It's a bit complicated. Actually, when I started uni, I'm going to confuse you so bad right now. When when I started uni, so I was accepted in photography class, and I'm sorry, not a class, a program in England, and also in Bulgaria. I decided to actually sign up for. This is so funny for Italian. So when I started studying my study, I actually started with Italian language, and I was studying for a teacher. And I did this. I had a very specific plan. I wanted to go there for just 1 year because I knew that the Erasmus, how am I supposed to call it?
Erasmus program.
Okay, this program for my photography program was actually with Italy. So I had no knowledge of Italian at all. And I was like, okay, I need to learn this language just to go to Italy for this program and study there for a semester and be happy. And that's it.
Where in Italy, where you were supposed to
I
go in
didn't
Italy?
go.
Yeah, but if you would have gone, which city? Where, in Milano
In
or?
Milan. Yeah, in Milan.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did this for a whole year. I studied Italian. Then I was so happy when I moved to the photography program. I was just so happy. I went there and I started studying both the second and the first year together. And this was the best decision ever because when you come from a high school for photography, it's just, you know, so much. After 5 years of studying photography, you know so much. And, you know, talking about composition, talking about light, there like, you cannot talk about very different things. Like, you need to learn the basics. And when you do that, you're pretty much set. And then you can talk about new technologies and things like that. But like with the internet today, you don't really need to go to a uni to learn that. You just have to open your browser and be done with it. So I finally end up in the photography program. And this was my very first year there. And then I had to, in my third year, I had to go to Milan for the uni there. And when I was applying, I actually was able to see their program there. And I saw that I'm going to study exactly the same things that I've been studying in my second year in Bulgaria. I was going to study exactly the same things in the third year in Milan. So I was like, oh my God, I cannot waste another year of repeating for the third time the same things. So I was like, I'm not going. And it was so confusing for everybody at the uni because I was an A student. I was having all the scholarships that I can get from uni, and they really wanted me to go because they knew that I'm going to represent the program in a good way. So they accepted me, and then I was like, right when I had to sign my documents, I was like, I'm not going. And they were so disappointed. And I remember that they wanted me to go like in 4 or 5 different rooms just to explain why I don't want to go. And I couldn't stop repeating myself. I was like, I don't want to study the same thing. I don't want to study the same thing. And each and every room, there were different people, and they were all asking me why. And I was constantly repeating myself. And then in the last room, there was this guy who was so funny to me because he was trying to act like a friend, and I was seeing him for the very first time, and he was like, "Come on, you can tell me the truth." And I was like, "Man, I've been telling the truth the whole time. What is wrong with you?" And he was like, "Come on, dear, you can tell me the truth. I'm your friend." And I was like, "I've never seen you before," but I was just thinking those stuff, and then I was like, "You know what? I just don't feel ready for this. I want to go for my graduation there. You can have like an additional semester." And I was like, "I just want to go there for this additional semester because I don't feel ready right now." And he was like, "Oh, that's so sweet. No worries at all. We're gonna figure it out. Don't worry." I was like, "Okay, is that it?" I just had to lie at the very beginning to make sure that you guys are gonna stop torturing me. So I didn't went there. And I in my third year at uni, I was so very bored. I was really bored, and I did something that all of my all of my mates at the uni, they were like, "What are you doing? This is so unnatural." Because I was studying for that. Sorry, I was going to shoot for magazine, for different magazines, and at the same time, I decided to go and assist different photographers, and everybody was like, "You're crazy." All of my classmates were like, "We want to shoot for magazines and you're doing it, and instead of just continuing, you're going to downgrade to working for other people." And I was like, "Yeah, I just want to see." So I started assisting different photographers, also some of my teachers at the uni, and I do not regret this at all. It's just so amazing to assist. It's so amazing to see what other people are doing, how they're approaching a problem that maybe tomorrow you're gonna have it on set. So this was really fascinating and really nice for me. And with all of this, I just wanted to say that sometimes maybe people think that you're making the wrong decision. Sometimes maybe people think that you're making just different and not really aligned decisions. Maybe you're doing something very unexplainable to them. But the thing is, you don't have to explain yourself to no one. Like, if you feel like so, just do it. It's fine. And even if it's wrong, even if it's something that it just it's not the way you thought it's going to turn out, it's all right. Like, this is a lesson learned, and it's fine.
Well, it sounds to me that although you could have been considered already successful, you combine a very big passion for the craft, and you stayed humble enough to say to yourself, I still want to learn. I still want to learn from others. I'm not like I mean, a lot of creatives, especially for example in my field, I know that architects, they get very douchey. They get super self-confident, and they're like God walking on planet Earth, and they stop looking for different perspectives. And I think this is also a very nice way you choose to explore photography as observer, as an assistant. And so when did you went back to fashion photography or commercials after like you complete this university, and how was the transition there in your creative life and career?
So I started assisting, but I did not stop shooting. So this was very important, and this was helping me in all kinds of ways because
Just a little question.
yeah,
Could,
sure.
could you mention which if it's not a secret, which magazines you were shooting for? Were there some
Yeah.
Bulgarian magazines or
Oh, not
international
only.
issues for Bulgaria?
Yeah, yeah. I had all kinds of magazines, like for example, Elle, Bazaar, Cosmopolitan, L'Officiel, and so on. Like most of the big names that you've heard. But I did not stop shooting, and I think this is the most important part because sometimes when people go to assist, especially if they're assisting very busy photographers, they might end up in this very bad rude when they're just helping other people. And the thing is, you have to remember that when you go assisting, you go because of you. Yes, you're there to help. This is your job. This is what you've got to do. But you're there because of yourself. So if you don't practice what you're learning, you're probably going to forget it. So whenever you shoot something interesting with this photographer, then come up with something new, something else. Don't shoot the same thing. Very important part, because otherwise you're just going to end up out of the studio of this photographer very easily. So come up with a new idea and just implement what you've learned. And maybe you will not show this editorial photo shoot, call it whatever you want, to no one ever. But you're going to carry this knowledge forever, simply because you've tried it. Because when, I don't know about everyone, I I don't like generalizing, but to me it always works. I've got to try something, I've got to touch it with my hands and taste it if I can, just to see how it's made. And if I do that, I'm going to remember. But if I just repeat it to myself, trust me, I will never remember this. So I think this is the key in a situation like this. And I also think that I forgot your question.
No, but this just what you just said happened. I heard that from many of my guests, and it's funny because I've discovered a few. I don't know if it's a year or months ago that there is this pyramid of learning, and that a lot of people think that like it's a, you can google it and you find a pyramid, which is a scheme of how you learn things, and that actually you like the worst way to learn is learning from someone, so as you to go to school, but you learn more if you put in practice what you
Yeah.
have learned. And the highest grade of learning is teaching, because
Oh,
you
nice.
teach what you know, and then you get like feedback from people, so they ask you questions, so you can
Yeah.
be more and more, you know, conscious of what you're doing.
And you
But no,
have to explain.
my question was like, when you completed the university, what was your career path afterwards?
So after I finished my BA, I signed up for MA because I wanted to teach. So I think I was still assisting back then, but I remember that at the time that I was almost at the end of my MA, I really felt the need to start on my own. Like, let everybody know that I'm not assisting anymore, because it's a very thin line and very fine balance when you're assisting and also having clients. I really don't think that everyone can do this. Not because it's super, like you've got to be super clever or something like this, but you've got to know how to manage your time. You've got to know how to talk to people, which is also very important. So I I really find this very important, and I really wanted to do this, but I didn't want it to confuse the people that I was working with. I wanted to stay friends with them, but as I said, it's a very fine balance. So you need to know that from a person that is assisting and helping and knowing their routines. Um, Suddenly, you're becoming someone that is competing for their job. So, yeah, you've got to be mm, very good at talking and very good with people, especially if we talk about small country. So, to me, it was an easy decision, to be honest, because I was just sometimes in my life when I cannot decide what to do. The universe is like, Virginia, you've got to do this. So I had a small accident. I had an accident with my food, and I ended up not being able to walk for like a month. I wasn't. Yeah, it was a nice. My leg was just huge and purple, but But it wasn't anything like there was nothing broken or something like this. So I was looking all right, but I wasn't feeling all right. So I wasn't able to walk and I wasn't able to assist, which was a good thing because back then I remember that I really wanted to start my own practice or, not or, and yeah. And I also wanted to start living with my boyfriend. So because of the uni, as I told you, I was taking all of the scholarships available there, and I had some spare money, also thanks to some of my assistant gigs. So I knew that I have the spare money, but I knew that I won't be able to put them all both in a studio and in apartment. So I knew that I had to choose, which wasn't really ideal in the situation. And the very fact that I cannot walk for a month wasn't really nice. But I remember I told to the studio that I was working most often with that I'm just unavailable for no one knows how long due to my situation. And I was constantly in front of my computer looking at spaces like apartments and studios and so on. And I remember I saw this gorgeous apartment. And I was like, hey, boyfriend, look at this apartment. It's just so gorgeous. And he was like, yeah, it's definitely not going to look like in the photos. But if you really want to, we can go and see it. So we went to see it. I was barely walking, but we went to see it. And it was exactly like the photos. And I just looked at this place and I was like, look at this high ceiling. It's just so spacious. I can definitely use one of the rooms. It's my personal studio, like not being there with clients, but I can shoot my personal projects here, which is so amazing because I won't have to work in different studios. And I'll be able to, instead of shoot there, I'll be able to shoot here. So this was a great opportunity to put some of the money that I have earned in a space that we're going to use together, and also in a space that is going to help me with my portfolio. So this is how I also called the people that I worked with back then, and I was like, you know what happened? Just we found a gorgeous place, and I was already prepping these people like that I'm going to just I will have to leave my job because I was just being honest. I was telling them that I'm soon going to graduate from my MA and I have to start, you know, working and earning money. So I was telling this like prior to the moment, I think for 6 months. So I believe people knew what's going to happen. And I was fortunate enough to have this opportunity, which was great. And it was the universe helping me, or call it whatever you want. It was just a good coincidence. And then I remember that I posted a photo of this little quotes like studio of mine because it wasn't a real studio, but I remember that I just tried to let everybody know that I'm on my own now. So they can call me and they can work with me. And because because I was shooting prior to that moment, people already knew my style. And it was a fairly easy road after that because people started to call. I remember I was shooting on lots and lots of personal projects, so I was able to remind them of myself constantly. And when I had clients, we were just hiring a studio and going there. And for my personal projects, I was using this space, which was gorgeous.
It's a nice story, and while you were telling it, I was thinking about some questions to ask you. Like,
Go ahead.
just so, how long time ago did you get this studio?
I think it was 7 years ago.
Okay, and
6 or 7 years, something like
I
that.
was wondering how many, because you said, like, I mean, Bulgaria, it's not a big country. It's
Yeah.
relatively small. It's around, I mean, officially I guess it's around 7,
7 million.
even
Yeah.
6 million. If we if we want to be honest, like actually people living in Bulgaria probably. And how many people in your industry are shooting for magazines or doing this assistances
Well,
gigs
there are lots of
roughly?
people that I cannot count them for sure because I don't want to sound douchey, but right now I'm not even aware of how many people are trying to enter the industry because usually the people that are on your level and higher than it are the people that you're interested in. So back then, because I was, as I told you, I was still shooting, though I was also assisting, I was already part of the circle. So, and by the way, my prize back then wasn't like a person entering the industry. So I was kind of competing with the people that I'm working with due to prices. And once I was done with assisting, I even upped my prices, which made me even higher paid than the people that I worked for like a month ago. So I was a real competition. I wanted everybody to know that. And from the people that are working, like the big names in Bulgaria, I think we're about no more than 15 people. No more.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. I mean, I don't want to. It's not to make you sound douchey. It's just because the podcast it's called the Creative Insider to explore the opportunities as a
Yeah, of course.
creative. But of course, I mean, and prior to you, because you managed to get into this small niche and into this industry, and I'm sure, and from hearing it from you, you're definitely a very intelligent person, because I mean you can hear that from how you talk, and you're definitely very passionate about your craft. And but it's to explain to somebody that's listening that if they want to become uh, photographers in this kind of photography niche in commercials and fashion, everywhere it's probably high competition, not only in Bulgaria, everywhere.
It is
And
very competitive. Yeah.
exactly. And it's crazy because your first professional gig was right into, like, I know people that are very successful on the international level, and they started by doing, I don't know, weddings.
Yeah.
So which is also an option.
Of
I
course.
was
It's nothing bad to it.
Yeah, so to tell people that Bulgaria, country of 6 million, I don't know how many photographers, but 15 get into this sort of circle. So it's and as you said, to get into a circle like this, it's a very small one, so you have to be very good, and also probably a little competitive, because the people who are already in the circle are not like
Yeah.
letting it go that easily. So you have to probably a little bit fight for your spot. That was my question. And because you said, like, you had this spare money from your gigs to actually buy a studio, although
Oh,
the
no. I did not buy it.
you rented.
Yeah, I rented. This is very
Okay.
important. Sorry if I've
Okay.
confused you. I
Because I
rented.
was like, okay, I just do a side gig and I have some
No.
money to buy a studio. Oh, okay, you rented
Maybe
it.
like 20 years ago, this was a possibility, definitely, but not today.
And I always try to talk a little bit about also the financial part of a job with my guests, and I always try to keep the question open, because I don't want it to be like, some people were also not willing to say how much money they earn, and I don't want to know it also about you. But if you can give me a range, how it works, like, do they pay you for a photo session, for day, for a
Yeah.
project,
So
how it works?
I can definitely help you with that. I'm not like having secrets, a part of the contracts that I've signed that I just cannot talk about. But I do teach also this very often. So it's not a problem for me to tell you. So there are different ways to actually approach a problem like that. For example, one of the ways that I really, really love, but not all the clients love, is to ask for budget. Some clients will actually share their budget with you, some won't. And for those that won't, you have to ask like a gazillion questions to actually come up with some sort of price for them. So if you know their budget, I think it's very easy because you know your starting point and you can tell them easily what you can fit in it, or they can give you the amount of money that they have decided to give for this project. Like they can give you their budget and they can also tell you. So, George, we, for example, want to have 15 images and we've got 4 models, and we also want to put these images, like 3 of those 15 images, we want to put on billboard, and the rest of them we're going to use for our website and social media, and we're going to use these photos for, let's say, 3 years. So the billboard is going to be in, let's say, in London, and it's going to be on Oxford Street. So our budget is this amount of money. Can we do it? So from here on, you can negotiate tons of things. Like, let's say that the budget is perfect for that. You'll simply say, of course we can do it, right? If the budget is way too high and you're a good, honest person, you can say, of course, we can do it. And also, you'll be able to use, let's say, 3 more images for print, um, like, let's say, A3 format. Okay. And if the budget is way too small, you can say, well, guys, because the budget is a little bit too small, let's say we do 12 images instead of 15. And then you can use the rest of the images as you want, and like from what you have sent me in the initial email. And let's say that the budget is very, very small. And I think this is the best part of having an open budget from the very beginning. You can simply say, guys, the budget is very small for me. Maybe we can talk next time when your budget can, have me on board. So there are different ways to approach a program like that. And I think the the biggest problem nowadays with budgets is that people are not explaining to their clients more details. So, as I said, if you're a good, honest person, you will tell them that they can also use some additional images or something like that. But many people will be like, oh, this budget is good. Yeah, which is not giving the client enough information why it's good. If the budget is okay for you, you can simply tell them, give them more information, like try harder. Tell them, yeah, this budget is really good for me because you also need these 3 images for Oxford Street. And this means that they will have a lot of exposure, which is going to bring you a lot of money in your pocket, right? So therefore, I would love to count those images as, let's say, they will have the biggest portion of the budget. But we also have, like, how many? I said 12 more images, and I'm going to need this and this budget for that. So this way, when you give them a little bit more info, if those clients, for example, after you do the photo shoot, so you're not clicking like 15 times and be done with it, right? You're gonna make different images, different amount of images for each and every project of yours, but hopefully you're not going to have 15 good images, you're going to have at least 20 good images, so you can show all of these 20 images to a client. And when you do that, hopefully your client will be like, well, we really cannot decide, we want all 20 images, how much is it going to cost? And when you've previously given them all these additional tips why this is the amount of money that you want, well, then you can easily say, okay, so we've got X amount of money as your budget, and we've got 15 images. I told you that the biggest amount of percentage is going to take the Oxford Street selection. So let's say you've got 12 images. This makes this Y amount of money, and this Y amount of money is, just divided by 12, and you have I'm sorry if it's way too complicated. I hope it's not.
No, it makes sense. You're doing
Okay.
it step by step, and I'm understanding every logic behind you, and
Perfect.
I think it's super interesting, and I'm already starting to get ready with my next questions in my head.
So let me just finish this one. If you divide this number, if you divide this price to number 12, let's say, you're going to have price for each and every image, and you're going to easily answer the question of your client: how much is going to cost this additional number of images? I think it was 5. So this is why you need to give more info. And if this budget is way too small for you, this is also something that you can share with your client. Many people forget to talk about it. They're just like, this is just so not enough. You guys are crazy. They're not crazy. They just don't know. So if you tell them, hey guys, okay, but let's see. What kind of, let's just foreplay this. What type of photo shoot do you want? Let's say that you're a client.
And I have to tell you what kind of photo
tell
shoot.
me whether we are shooting cameras or we're shooting models or we're shooting cups.
We're shooting models.
Okay, we're shooting models, and you are, let's say, you're a fashion designer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can tell you this. So, for example, your budget is X amount of money, and this is a very small amount of money for me. So instead of being like, George, you're crazy, no one's going to take this project and be done with you, I can tell you, well, George, how much money is this dress that is like the signature piece of yours?
How much money is the signature piece of mine?
Yeah. Give me.
I'm a
like,
very. I mean,
easy number, like $10.
Well, no, 10,000. Come on, Virginia. I'm a successful designer from Milano.
Okay, perfect. So this is good. Yeah, 10 is going to work.
No, okay. Let's say a realistic budget, like $100, because
It doesn't
well,
have
if
to
I
be
have a
realistic.
$10,000 dress and I'm like cheap on you, that's pretty shitty.
No. It's okay. So many people do that. They're cheap on their photographers, let's say, not because they want to be cheap, because they don't know. Like, if you're a good designer, you know how to design. You are not aware what's the price of like everything. If it's your first time doing a photo shoot, right? You cannot know this. So sometimes you're risking being too cheap on someone without really wanting this. And let's say that the very first collection of yours was shot by some of your best friends, right? And of course, they did it for free because they're your best friends. So why not? And you've got this pretty decent photo shoot, not professional, but pretty decent. And it gave you a lot of success. So now, the next season, you're a very well known designer, right? And you've got to approach a real photographer. So if they're asking you for a budget and you don't know what to say, you might look like you're like trying to be cheap, but you're not. You just don't know. So if I'm this photographer that you're approaching and I tell you, man, you're crazy, you're still gonna not know, right? When you approach the second one. But if I'm like, hey, George, okay, so the signature piece of yours is like 10,000, but you want to give me $10 for this photo shoot? Let's think about it. So this is like a super small proportion of your signature piece, right? But you want to sell it. And I know how to shoot it for you so that you can sell it. So if you're willing to pay me the amount that I deserve, we can really do this together. And if this is the amount of money that you can spare right now, that's totally fine. But you will have to be sure that maybe you're turning to a photographer that is also your friend or something like that, because you want your signature piece to look great, right? So you know that you need a professional. But unfortunately, that's not a price that a professional would accept.
And I have a question here because I
Go
mean,
ahead.
defining what is the range of budgets are fitting to you or not. What does it come first? I don't know if you can understand it if you put it this way, but does it come first your skill or your name? And by that I mean like because now you are an affirmed photographer in at least in the Bulgarian realm of photography. Um, I've seen on your Instagram. I'm gonna be bragging here for you that you have won also
Thank
some
you.
awards, so that I get the whole douchiness and how cool is my guest and not you.
Nice.
And I mean, I said that in the last podcast. It's still small, so we don't have haters, so it's okay. The moment I get some haters, I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna be bragging about my
Yeah,
haters.
it means that we're doing
Um,
something great.
yeah, so I'm curious, like because of course now I mean you're more affirmed than maybe in the beginning. So were you already pointing up at the numbers you're pointing now when you were starting, or now your name, so also you can afford, so to say, or not afford, but you know you have created a certain quality. I always make an example, like if I have the budget for a T-shirt by H&M
Mhm.
and I go to Armani with the same money, they won't tell me, oh yeah, of course we're gonna give you a T-shirt. They're gonna tell you, well, that's not the right shop for you.
Yeah,
So
I think I understand the question. I think so. I've never been a chip photographer. I knew at the very beginning, probably because I was taught by photographers, not just teachers, not just theory guys. I was taught by people that are actually working it. So everybody was telling me, you've got to take as much as a professional would if you're aiming to be a professional. So at the very beginning, starting, I knew, and I still have this attitude that if you are just loving the project, if you want to take it, but like your client is not having the money, you've got to be honest with them. You've got to tell them, well, the budget that you have is not going to cover my services. However, I really love the project, so I'm going to do it for free. But the actual amount of this project is this and this much because they've got to know. And if you love the project this time, it's not a guarantee that you're going to love the second, let's say, edition of the advertising or like a year later or something like that. And it doesn't mean that you have to work for free always. But if this is the project that you're willing to take, like just because you love it, take it for free. And if it's a project that like you love and there is a budget for it, take the money that you deserve. And if it's a project that you don't like, but there is a budget for it, take the money because you're a professional and this is just work. And if it's a project that you love, you're just going to do it. Like I've got this rule for myself. There are three things that for me define a project. This is the team behind the project, the idea behind the project, and the money behind the project. And I actually have a whole podcast about it, a whole episode about it in my podcast. And I explain it in details, but here, just to mention it, I'm just going to say that. So, in order to take a project, I've got to cover two of those three. Either I have to love the idea and the team, or the idea and the money and not be so sure about the team, let's say, or the team and the money and not be so sure about the idea. But I've got to cover two of those three. And if I do that, I'm happy to work for a project because it means that afterwards I won't be exhausted for no reason. I will know that I've spent a good time, you know, because if I don't like the team and the money, I'm just wasting my time instead of spending it with the people that I love, for example, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen this way of thinking recently in a book I'm reading. It's called Super Thinking. So it's very interesting that you.
It's not my idea. I think it was I the first time that I heard it. I think it was in the creative. Forget the name of the podcast of Chase Jarvis. I forgot the name, but
Okay,
the
I
guy's
don't
Chase
know that
Jarvis.
podcast, but yeah, I've read it recently in a book. This it's called Super Thinking. It's a
Mhm.
very cool book because it explains some mental models we can use to tweak our brains to
I'll
think
check
in
it out.
a. Yeah, it's cool. It's I like it. It's very easy to read also, and it's very clear. And but yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, from what I'm hearing, I can totally see that you're experienced in the field, and you sort of have a good combination of creative spirit and also, let's call it, the business side of creativity.
Yeah.
um, I'm I'm gonna conclude this topic business with a very last question. You can also decide not to answer if you don't want to. But what is the range, like the lowest budget? I mean, a part of free, you just said, if it's a very cool project, and what is the highest budget you would accept? Like, what is the range in the Bulgarian real, not you in general, in the Bulgarian real?
Okay, so I think there is something that I have to mention. Well, so we said that I'm a Bulgarian photographer many times, but I think the main thing is that I'm not only working in Bulgaria. Actually, most of my following is coming from UK, I think, and the States. So that's a
Okay,
reality.
then international
Yeah,
photographer.
yeah. No, I just want to mention it because I don't want to confuse people. But
Yeah, sure.
the lowest, I'm not going to get into details of prices, but I'm going to get into the details of the type of project. So the lowest amount of money I've taken on photo shoots for magazines, which is probably going to be a big surprise for the people that are out of the industry. And the biggest amount of money, of course, I've been taking on the commercial projects for advertising.
Okay. I well, I guess that it's normal because advertising, it's about selling the
Yeah.
product, so making money. And okay, then I'm I think we can go on other topics about photography, which I was thinking are very interesting because, when we talk, and meanwhile, I just was checking a little bit also your pictures and thinking about what I would ask you as I have you here now. I saw that you have a lot of fashion photography and modeling, and I wanted to ask you how much of this kind of photography is just camera, lights, and makeup, and how much is post production? Because this is a very big topic. Because this photography affects. It's not only about the art, but also about the consumer of the art. Because if you make an image of a model which looks so amazing, and then might have some impact on, for example, other girls which
Yeah.
look at the picture, for example. So how much of it is real, and how much of it is all the beauty of the setup?
Yeah. So since I started working with classic cameras and classic process, I can definitely tell you that this is a big part of me still. So I will not try to be modest here because I'm really good at Photoshop. Sorry about that, guys, but I've really put a lot of effort into learning little tricks and details. And I became really good at this. But I think what's the most important part about learning a craft is to really, really know it very well, just so you don't use it. So I know Photoshop. I don't really like spending a lot of time in it. So what you see from my photography mostly is, I believe, light, really good makeup artists, really good stylists. I really, really try my best to surround myself with really good team, and amazing models. For me, this is the key. And when I talk about models, it's very funny sometimes, especially when I talk to my friends that are outside of the industry, because they see a certain model on my images and they're like, "Whoa, she's so beautiful!" And like, I'm like, "Oh, be careful! She's not even 18." And they're like, "Oh my god, how is that possible?" But the thing is, when you've got a good makeup artist, and I really say good, and I mean it, because we don't talk about a lot of makeup. We talk about the perfect amount at the perfect place. So they can do miracles with this. And I started doing a lot of fashion work after my graduation, but I'm starting to take a step back from it lately, because I realized I have a lot of issues, just as the one you said. Don't want to I don't want to help to little girls associate with only perfect models. So I even have some images in my portfolio, also on Instagram, where I'm not even retouching at all. I'm just converting the image. So it's basically a JPEG, and that's it. So for me, that's important. And I also think this is something that comes with years, because I used to be a tomboy. I used to be a person who was not really, I just want to go to photo shoots. This is all I wanted to do. And sometimes people were telling me that I cannot go because I'm a girl. They cannot have me to assist on their photo shoots because I'm a girl, because I cannot carry a lot. So I was doing my best to carry all the things possible to show people that I'm actually capable of doing that. And I was constantly wearing jeans, and you know, I, I just wanted to be there. I don't want them to see me as a girl or a boy. I just want to be there. So I was really doing my best to show how capable I am. And I was neglecting being a girl. And with the time, this this is something that I've realized, and I'm realizing even now. Like, I at the beginning of this year, I had a really, really, really bad episode of my dermatitis. And my hands were looking so bad. I wasn't able to pick up a camera. I wasn't able to pick up a spoon, even. And it's not something, like, it's not a disease that I can give to you or something like that. It's just simply personal. It's basically, in my case, a very strong allergy. And that's it. I cannot give it to you. But it was just so ugly. Let's face it, it was really ugly. And then I basically saw how my skin is regrowing. I saw how amazing my body is, like what it can do. I'm not even talking about shapes or something. I'm talking about the abilities of my body to regrow skin, to heal itself. And right now I'm appreciating that so much. And I believe this is something that comes with a time. Like, for example, if you're a little girl right now, you probably think that there is someone looking better than you, and there is someone with, I know, I don't know, bluer eyes than yours or something like that. And these are probably the images that you are going to notice on your feed. You're not going to look for curvy girls with brown eyes and brown skin and brown hair or something like that. You're going to look for the perfect image in your head. But with the time, this perfect image is just changing. And for me, this perfect image also changed. So I've never looked for the 90s perfect model when it's their measurements are 90, 60, 90 or something like that. And I've never been into that. I've always been into beautiful looking girls. And to me, the beauty is coming from within. I've always said, after, even after amazing shoots, and I'm just coming home and telling to my boy, you know what? this girl is gorgeous, but she's not gorgeous just because the way she looks. She's gorgeous because she was so clever and so humble and so amazing. And I think that's what makes the perfect person. And you can see it on images. You really can. Like if you look closely, doesn't matter if there is Photoshop or not, you will see it.
Yeah, I think everybody have experienced in their life a moment where they were, for example, I don't know, seeing a person, they were thinking it's always so gorgeous and beautiful, and then they meet them in person, and for example, they have a this very ugly character, and they they're like the beautiful apple rotten from the inside,
George,
and then
let's
in
talk about the good stuff. Let's talk about the most.
no, because
Someone is
it's, I
so
mean,
amazing
I
and
talk
so
about stuff in general, and this is like, and I have experience also that, for example, the opposite. I mean, I think it's true that the soul of a person affects also then your
yeah.
perception. But I think that it's a very delicate aspect, for example, for younger people in general, not only girls but boys too, that
Mhm.
they're very much
Well, I can
into.
talk from the standpoint of a girl, so
Yeah, yeah, of course. But I mean, in general, I don't know. I mean, um, currently society and this new form of social media are developing so quickly, and I think that it's very difficult for the younger people with all the filters and media they get bombarded every day to sometimes appreciate themselves.
yeah.
But when we were talking, you said that you were yeah, you wanted to be on set, and you had difficulties to be accepted as a girl, basically from the crew, because you couldn't carry that much. But also another thing, I was wondering if you were easily accepted from the female models, because I mean, you said yourself some of the models, they're very young, they start at the age of 16, 17.
Yeah.
For example, I have one of my cousins, she's a little, yeah, older than me. When she was younger, she was modeling in Rome for Valentino, and she started probably at 16, 17.
Yeah.
And it, those models, are they feel more comfortable when the photographer is another girl, or is that no factor?
They are starting even younger. Once I was on a set with a girl and I was like, "Hey, how the modeling agency found you?" And she was like, "Well, I was on the swings and then the agent came and I was like, "Oh man, that's cool. It's nice
That's
to meet
creepy.
I don't know if they have a better time with me because like I haven't been on like you have to ask them for this to be honest because I don't know how they what are they experiencing when they've been
Mhm.
uh, photographed by a male but I've been told that they're really comfortable by themselves which is nice and I realized that I have never had problems when I'm shooting like a model with less clothing, let's say, because I remember when I was really young and think I was still at school and I had to do a nude photo shoot and I was so for me that was no brainer. Like I don't think a person should be ashamed of the way they look, regardless of the way they look. Like you've got a body, you're lucky enough. So I had this photo shoot, and the girl was a little bit worried, and I was like, "Hey, do you want me to get naked too?" She was like, once she heard that, she was like, "Nah, it's not a problem." She knew that for me, this wasn't an issue, so it was fine. And ever since, it's been fine. Like also when I'm shooting naked or half naked boys, I think they're a little bit more self conscious, honestly, because like they always want to puff up and they're doing some exercises before that. But I think it's just a general like insecurity. It's not a girl or a boy. I don't know. I really hope that girls are and boys are really feeling comfortable shooting with me.
Well, I hope so too. But it's maybe a question to ask next time, being creepy in the end of the photo. How did you feel with me? How? um,
No.
and yeah, and I was curious also because you're a freelancer, like you work on your own. Now in this crazy year we are living, 2020, how was the situation as a freelancer? I guess that as a, I don't know, did you lose any gigs or did you got more because maybe we're more on, I don't know, media, and media is more quiet? I don't know. How is the situation?
For me, it was a little odd, to be honest. I feel like I'm seeing all of this like in a movie and I'm not really part of it, simply because I told you about my bad episode with the dermatitis, which was exactly when the big pandemic started. So I wasn't really able to be involved that much in it because I had my own problems, which was great timing because I wasn't able to shoot and I was also not allowed to shoot, which was good because I didn't have to turn any clients down. Because once you turn a client down, it's very hard to gain them back in your list. But fortunately, it didn't happen. And I told you about my podcast. So at the very beginning, when it started, it wasn't like people weren't locked or something. It was just big stress about it. I focused mostly on the people that are listening to the podcast, and we started some interviews with them. I started asking what's the situation in their country. So I know from them that many of those other creators have lost jobs. In my case, I had a photo shoot right before the lockdown. And I remember just one of my models called and asked if it's okay to just stay at home because she had two kids. I was like, of course, sure, just stay at home. It's totally fine. Like, you've got to be human instead of like think about just about a photo shoot. And I had a second model there. So for me, it wasn't a problem. But pretty much that's it. Thanks to my advertising jobs, thanks to this sounds funny because it's what I'm going to say. It's just, it doesn't sound like something to brag about, but it is not. When you shoot for advertising jobs, you're usually receiving your money a month or several months later. And thanks to this, I did not really felt any problems with the whole lockdown because I was still receiving money. And right after they decided to put everything back to work, some clients were really stressed out that they won't be able to survive another lockdown, or even that they'll have the chance to shoot it like if there is a second lockdown soon. So they rushed into shootings, and that was also good in terms of finance. But yeah, I really feel like I'm just watching this from distance.
Well, but it's not about bragging. You were lucky enough not to be
Yeah.
uh, hit by it. I mean, myself, I was uh, lucky enough so far not to lose my job and
Sure.
to keep working, and actually working more than before because the projects I'm doing are very, you know, tight deadlines, a lot of extra hours, a lot of work. But it's interesting, and it's to me it's a very good surprise to find out that there are people like you from Bulgaria, because I always say that as someone that has this duality, that we don't, a lot of, like, generally, I'm not saying you, but generally Bulgarian people have this sense of sort of, I don't want to sound bad, but it's sound this sense of inferiority, that we have something missing there, but it's not true. And there are a lot of like high end qualified people and stuff coming from Bulgaria, which are super awesome and to be proud of. And I was curious because I found out you have a podcast just right before we started to record this one. And how is your podcast called, and what is it about?
Well, my podcast is called the Fashion Photography Podcast. It started right after I don't think I even finished. I think I was still in my MA. It wasn't my idea. It was my boyfriend's idea because he knew I really wanted to teach, and he was like, yeah, "I don't know why you want to teach the uni. You can just do a podcast." And I was like, "Are you crazy? It's not the same at all." But he was like, "Why don't you give it a try?" And it turned out that I love it so much. And I did a podcast. I think already 5 years, maybe we're starting the sixth one. I'm not even sure, but I do not advertise it, and I think that's the beauty of it because it's in English. Most of the people in Bulgaria don't know even about it. Many of the people in Bulgaria, like I told you, that most of my following is not from Bulgaria, so it's very hard for me to associate myself with Bulgaria. To be honest, like I've never advertised myself like a Bulgarian photographer, and it's even so awkward right now when you're saying it, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm really Bulgarian. Like, I'm not ashamed of it or anything like that. I'm considering myself like my home is Earth, and that's it. I do not have a particular country. I do not have a particular, you know, even a continent. It's just Earth. Because I think when you're a creator, you don't have boundaries, and that's the podcast about actually. Because we interview different people connected to the fashion photography world, of course, and we talk to some of the most amazing photographers out there, like very high caliber people. And we also have stylists, agents, makeup artists. We have all kinds of variety of people. And it's so amazing because a young photographer, whether it's going to be a fashion photographer, whatever the field is going to be, and even if it's not a photographer, the person can simply see that you can take whatever the path you want, and it's going to lead you where you want if you work hard enough. Because, as I told you, these are very high caliber people. And if you ask a photographer, most of them will tell you, well, I want to shoot for Vogue, I want to do this, I want to do that. And those people are doing it. But each and every one of them is having a different path. So I think that this is reassuring creatives that they can do whatever they want. Just follow your heart and it's all going to get into place.
I totally agree with you,
Yeah.
and I'm really it's very inspiring to hear this story, and now everybody gonna know that you're a Bulgarian photographer because I was excited to have my first Bulgarian guest, and then comes up that you're very
Sorry.
international oriented, and I'm gonna check your podcast.
Yeah, I hope you're not like disappointed on me that I'm not associating myself. Like,
No,
I am Bulgarian. I was born in Bulgaria and I live in Bulgaria most of the time, but like I don't know. I was very easily recognized outside of Bulgaria. Like it was so easy. And like it wasn't easy because it took a lot of work. But you know what? When I'm sorry to say this for myself, it's not for me. I'm saying this for the people that are listening. But if you work towards what you want to do, you're going to become better, whether you want it or not, whether this is your goal or not. If you work every day, you're going to get better at this. So I really worked hard, and thanks to the social media, thanks to the internet, thanks to my travels, it's just easy for the people to recognize you whatever you are. And as I told you, Bulgaria is very small, so the competition here is very active. And regardless of how good you are, sometimes when the community is so small and they're rejecting you all the time, you're probably going to start asking yourself whether you're that good. But if everybody around the world is like, whoa, your work is amazing, this is a good confirmation for you. And it's a good way for you to confirm where you are on the map. And this is not necessarily the country you live in or the country you were born at. You're just good. And it's not thanks to geography. You're just good because you've worked towards that.
I'm gonna conclude this with a quote from my grandma.
Oh,
For your luck, you need to work. So yeah, exactly.
Oh, this sounds so Bulgarian, by the way.
Yeah, of course. It's a very Bulgarian. We have the best Bulgarian, what is called wise way of thinking. So, well, Virginia, I'm very glad and very honored to have had this chat with you. For me, it felt a little bit. I had the similar experience with another girl was on a podcast. She's called Elizabeth Steinberg. She's makes animations. And I didn't know her, and we were talking, and then with you, I had the same feeling because she was dropping this information. At some point, she said, "And by the way, at that point, I received the Emmy award," and I was like, "What the hell? Like what?" So with you was the same. You did pictures for Cosmopolitan. You work a lot abroad. You've been nominated. I don't know, photographer of the year, fashion photographer of the year in Bulgaria, 2019, something like that.
I wasn't just nominated.
So I'm gonna be bragging here for you, and thank you. And you can shout out a little bit. Where can people again listen to your podcast and find more about your picture on the internet?
Oh, that's so sweet. So you can simply find me on Instagram, and there are links for everything because it's a lot. So yeah, find me on Instagram, and you can find everything else there. It's virginiay.photo.
Yeah, I'm gonna put links in the description so that you can just easily click down or check at least how it's spelled, because I think Spotify doesn't offer the option to click on the links. And for the rest of the people who are listening, you can support this podcast just by following our social media, which are at TCI Podcast on Instagram, and then The Creative Insider on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So thank you, Virginia, one more time, and enjoy your day.
Thank you, George, for having me. Enjoy your day too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The whole world stops just like that. The whole world stops just like that.